Um, Here with us, Mr. Jauhar Saleem, former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan and a career diplomat.
Pleasure.
It's nice having you.
Same here. It's my pleasure to be here.
Recently, Pakistan emerged as a good diplomatic position in mediating Pakistan and USA. How you seen, given the volatile geopolitical landscape, how sustainable the negotiating process that has went through in the last couple of weeks?
What Pakistan has accomplished in recent weeks in terms of its diplomacy is a remarkable feat. Of course, the whole world is appreciating it because many believe that Pakistan brought not just this region, but the world from the brink of a disaster to a situation where we are now heading in the direction of controlled de-escalation. Having America and the US sit on the same table after 49 years and such a high level face-to-face talks was something, like perhaps unimaginable during and after during this war in particular. Having said that, we saw the deadlock that happened. We saw the diplomacy which is taking place after that. And every day we see a lot of good news and sometimes some bad news as well in terms of where things are heading to. The whole world is looking at Pakistan right now. The diplomacy that is taking place in the capitals, for instance, in Tehran, in Riyadh, in Washington, in all the important capitals in terms of the situation that we are in. It's not easy by any means. It's very, very challenging. And why is that? There are some huge impediments in the way of peace, in the way of an agreement. And what are those? The biggest, I think, is the trust deficit between the two sides. US, Israel on the one hand, Iran on the other. And of course, in some ways, the Gulf countries are also now a party to this conflict because they have been attacked. So that trust deficit, it's historical, it's seemingly insurmountable. So to neutralize that, what Pakistan did was that Pakistan puts its own credibility at stake. Because Pakistan is trusted by all the three sides of the conflict, whether it's Iran, whether it's the US, whether it's Saudis and other Gulf countries. Pakistan has excellent relations, fraternal ties with Iran, fraternal ties with Saudi and the Gulf countries, and long-standing relations with the US, which are in a very good phase presently. So Pakistan used the confidence or employed the confidence that those countries have in Pakistan to fill some of that gap, that trust gap between the parties. But there are some critical issues, which still need to be resolved. We all know that it started with 15 points from the US and 10 points from Iran. And initially, there were positions of poles apart, totally divergent. From there, a framework of 10 points was agreed by Pakistan's, or because of Pakistan's very hectic and intense diplomacy. And it was on the basis of that framework that the first round of discussions took place in Islamabad, a 20-hour-long marathon session. Unfortunately, there was a deadlock, particularly because of the differences on 2 or 3 critical points. And what are those critical points? Number one is the nuclear issue, where the two sides have very different perceptions. Then the second is the sanctions relief and the unfreezing of the assets, those assets that, there are the tens of billions of dollars worth of Iranian assets which have been frozen by the US and Western countries. And thirdly, the matter of Strait of Hormuz, which Iran had blocked and which the US and perhaps most of the world wanted to be unblocked to the extent to which it was just before the war.
Recently, Pakistan's military chief Field Marshal Asif Munir and Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif visited Saudi Arabia, and military chief visited Iran. So Pakistan role is positive and proactive. But today's development is that the Hormuz is blocked again by Iran. How hopeful you are of the de-escalation process and Pakistan's effort here?
Let's dissect what is happening. What is happening is that, okay, like a few days back, in fact, even in to the last couple of days, we were hearing a lot of good news, that Iran agreed to unblock the Strait of Hormuz until the end of the ceasefire. And that ceasefire deadline could have been extended. So that was a very important statement. On the other hand, we saw that, there was a ceasefire in Lebanon as well. That is very important. There were some other indications that the two sides are getting closer on the nuclear issue as well.
As you see, Bangladesh and many other energy import dependent countries are facing crisis. How Pakistan is navigating through? We have heard some positive news from Pakistan that you are focusing on renewable energy. How we can learn from focusing on renewable energy sectors and less depending fossil fuels, and facing those volatile geopolitical hassles on and again.
Absolutely right. All the countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, and of course, even South Korea, China, Japan, a big part of Asia is facing an energy crisis as well. And in fact, there's a bigger threat, and that is that because 34% of the world's fertilizers come through Strait of Hormuz, and because of the blockage, there's a big possibility of a food crisis in the coming months if this issue is not resolved. So that is there. Now, in terms of what Pakistan's experience with the renewables, now you see, it's very interesting. In the 60s and 70s, Pakistan had an energy mix which was primarily renewable. It was based on the dams, hydroelectric primarily. But then we made a mistake. We sort of, we changed our energy mix to more towards the fossil fuels, like the thermal power. And that has been a big disaster. But now we are trying to, again, change our energy mix to the renewables, particularly not just hydroelectric, but also solar and wind. Now, what is happening in solar in particular in Pakistan is fascinating. And that has not been done at the state level or the governmental level. That has been done at the private sector level. What has happened is that thousands upon thousands of megawatts of capacity has been added to the national grid through microsolar. People have just set up solar plants on their rooftops, and not just on the rooftop of houses, but even factories are shifting to solar fuel, solar-based energy. And the statistics are just remarkable. Like, in just the last few years, like I said, by some estimates, more than 10,000 megawatts, even more, of sort of, capacity has been added in terms of solar. So that has really helped the country change its energy mix. And I think that is the way of the future, the micro solar, because, sometimes the large scale solar plants, they take time to sort of, to set up, and they have some issues as well. We also had some issues with the mega solar plants, such as the Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park. But the micro solar has been exceptionally successful. And the prices have come down to a point where it is actually cheaper than energy being produced from other means, including thermal. So it has now basically, like the for-profit market is now the sort of, the mainstay of this change. And I think that could be a good model for Bangladesh as well, because, like our countries are blessed with sun. Similarly, wind energy, while Pakistan has added about 1,000 to 1,500 megawatts of capacity through wind, but there have been some challenges in that. I think on that also, if we get some sort of a micro sort of, wind power, sort of, like technology eventually, that might be more successful. But micro solar has been spectacularly successful. And I think that would be something that could be emulated by, our friends, especially in Bangladesh.
Despite huge potential, bilateral trade between Pakistan and Bangladesh is very limited. What sectors can be a potential sector for Bangladesh and Pakistan to navigate in bilateral trade and commerce?
I believe there are lots of complementarities. Yes, it is true that both the countries have similar exports and similar imports. Like we are big exporters of textiles and leather products, and like and importers of machinery and electronics and pharmaceuticals. And so both the countries have similar, but still, there's this huge potential of creating value, creating synergies within the same sectors as well. Because Pakistan specializes in certain areas of textiles, while, for instance, Bangladesh is very, is excellent in terms of sort of, garments. Pakistan is better in terms of, or more specialized in terms of home textiles. So, and similarly, in other categories, in surgical instruments, Pakistan has a special expertise. Bangladesh has expertise in other areas. So I believe that there are lots of complementarities. The bilateral trade could very easily get into a multi-billion dollar framework in the coming years. What we need to do is two things. One is to create the institutional mechanisms to facilitate this trade, and second is to enhance contact between our business leaders. More exchange of delegations, a better dissemination of information about business opportunities in each other's countries. And sort of and perhaps we also need mechanism. For instance, if we have to carry all our trade in US dollars, sometimes it becomes difficult because both our countries face pressure on our foreign reserves. So sometimes if we can come up with alternative mechanisms for trade, I think that would be very helpful as well.
SAARC, South Asian Regional Association for Regional Cooperation, played a vital role in the 80s and 90s in bilateral trade and multilateral trade and cultural exchanges. Do you see any potential of reviving SAARC?
I see the potential is there. Unfortunately, it's India's, obduracy. It's India's intransigence, which is blocking the whole process, which is very unfortunate. Because see, South Asia houses 1/4 of the world population. But the intra-regional trade here is less than 3%. And in absolute terms, in dollars, it's just abysmal, And this is a potential which has been totally unutilized. And we need to focus on that. And not just bilateral trade, bilateral investment, multilateral investment or regional investment and investment cooperation, then regional tourism. We need to promote that as well. We need to promote regional people-to-people contact in terms of education, science, culture, so many different areas. And for that, I think SAARC is a great vehicle. But we have to now look at a scenario where with or without India, we move ahead. The Secretary General of SAARC visited Pakistan last year. He's of course from Bangladesh. And he actually visited my office as well. We had a very good discussion and we exchanged views on sort of, on ideas as to how to sort of, reinvigorate SAARC again. And we have to remember that SAARC was the vision of, a former Bangladesh president.
Rahman.
Exactly. It was the brainchild
the father of the
Jauhar
current prime minister.
Exactly. You see, so that is why I think this is the right time to reinvigorate SAARC, and Pakistan and Bangladesh can play a pivotal role in this regard, working together.
Do you see any potential for common currency and borderless trade in commerce like European Union and other regional blocs?
You see, we have to gradually move towards that type of regional cooperation. First of all, we have to start with less trade restrictions, because what is the way forward? First, you trade a free trade zone, like in the whole region. Then the next destination is to become a common market. Like where both sort of capital and sort of goods and services could move as well. And then you move forward. This is all a gradual process. But the unfortunate reality is that we haven't even started the process yet. The European Union's started in the 50s in terms of its inception, the process. And there are so many other very, very successful models. ASEAN is there, NAFTA is there, even Mercosur. So, but unfortunately, South Asia is lagging far behind other countries, other regions of the world in terms of regional integration. We need to start the process somewhere, in a substantive manner, that is.
And in recent months, we have seen there is some tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan, long-term neighbors and friendly nations. Do you think it will escalate or had some issues and create long-term conflicts, or it will de-escalate soon?
Well, our sincere desire and our endeavors are that, it does not get escalated. Pakistan is facing this menace of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, which is very unfortunate because they had made so many promises, they had made so many commitments that they will not allow their soil to be used against Pakistan in terms of terrorism or militancy. But, none of their promises or commitments have been realized. So we were left with no choice. We had to use all the options that we have. What are those options now? We have the military option, the kinetic option, as they say. We have the economic option in terms of the bilateral trade, in terms of the transit trade, because that's a landlocked country. We used to provide them avenues for transit trade. Then again, we can use diplomacy, which we have been using as well. And within diplomacy, it's bilateral diplomacy, regional diplomacy, international UN-based diplomacy. So we are using all possible means, and in a well-calibrated manner. And our purpose is very, very simple. The purpose is that instead of, terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, we should have a cooperative, friendly relationship with the two countries because we have so many commonalities, historical linkages. And then if that happens, if the flow of terrorism stops from there are so many, there are wondrous opportunities for both countries. Because Afghanistan could be the linchpin in our sort of, the focal point, the connector in terms of our vision to connect South Asia and Central Asia and sort of, and the whole region with West Asia, because it has such a great geostrategic location. So we hope that sanity will prevail in Kabul, and they will embark upon a path of peace and progress rather than a path of conflict and discord.
Coming to the last questions regarding Bangladesh and Pakistan. In the last year, a flight between Bangladesh and Pakistan renewed. And people to peer, what potential you see in regard to people connection and how cultural actions can help here? We have seen in the last couple of months some influencers from both Bangladesh and Pakistan visited Pakistan and Bangladesh, vice versa. So what potential you see in people to people connection and how cultural actions can help to rebond the national ties and which influence to the bilateral trade and mutual respect?
I see a great potential. I think, Pakistan wants excellent relations with Bangladesh in all areas, that is our fervent desire. We want a relationship of trust, of mutual respect, of cooperation, of cordiality. And we want to see more people-to-people contact because, there's so many commonalities. And there's so much goodwill on both sides, I would say. I recently had a delegation from Bangladesh. It had media personalities, think tanks, researchers, scholars, a delegation of 20 or 30 people, some politicians as well. And the goodwill that we witnessed was amazing. And the goodwill that you will witness on Pakistan side, I believe, would be total reciprocity. So I think that needs to be translated into closer, more cooperative, and sort of, more mutually beneficial relationship in all areas.
Want to end this interview with this good vibe. Thank you for your valuable time and invaluable insights.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.